Welcome to Avritt's Academy, the broadcast dedicated to Christian educators at home and at school. My name is Katherine Avritt. We are going to start episode 2 of the series, Everything Rises, All Failures Are Communication Failures. Thank you for joining me today. I'm so excited to continue our series of All Failures Are Communication Failures. Last time we spoke about the first and most important priority of communication would be with God. You probably heard it said, if you're a church-going person, that all failures are prayer failures, and prayer is communicating with God. And I went over the 5 things that you need to make sure you're praying for in your classroom. Today's topic or episode is we need to make sure that we're communicating with your school administrator. Now, I know that could be an administrator, it could be a principal. If you do homeschooling, it could be your spouse. Maybe if you go through a charter school, maybe there's someone that you need to check in there. But I'm going to talk about communicating with your administrator or your supervisor, whether it's a principal, a pastor, a spouse, as I said. So having proper communication with those that are in a role or a position as a supervisor is very important. Now, something that happens in Christian schools a lot is that our Christian school administrator or principal, they are great people, and they sometimes they have not been in a classroom situation. So they are very wise, and they love the Lord, and they know a lot about church ministry and stuff, but sometimes they don't know what it's like to be day-to-day in classroom operations. So I'm just going to go over a few things that you need to make sure that you're in good communication with your supervisor, administrator, principal, spouse, charter school person, whoever it is that fills that role. So first person you need to communicate about is yourself. Now, for yourself, you need to communicate what's working and what's not working for you. Now, personal experience, I am a person who just likes to say yes to anything because I am a people pleaser. But sometimes in the beginning of a school year, before something has happened, I'll say, yes, I'll take that responsibility on, or yes, we will do this project, or so forth. But then as we get into it, I realize that it's not anything that I can handle, and it's much bigger than I should have volunteered for, and I need to communicate, hey, this isn't working out for me. I said that I can handle, running this fundraiser, but it's really too much. So you need to communicate that if something isn't working for you. Maybe you have a combination of a class where I've had this before in years past, where I am teaching a course, and then in the back of the class there's another grade that's in study hall, and maybe it's just not a good fit because every student interacts differently or tries to behave differently with different people around them. And so if it's something like that, like, hey, this classroom situation isn't working, we need to change this, you need to keep them in the know. And you can't really over communicate. It's important that the person who is the administrator or principal knows what's happening in your classroom, and if they want to help you, it is their goal to help you. So if you are struggling with a scheduling issue or something that maybe you think, wow, I got into this school year and I can't handle X, Y, or Z, I need some relief, I need some help with it, just make sure that you communicate with them about you. Another thing about planning events or doing that is to always keep the school administrator in the know. Like, hey, I sent out a letter today reminding all the parents about the fundraiser, or we're planning for a Christmas program, I'm having after school practices. You never want to put your supervisor, I'm just going to use the word administrator, in a position where a parent approaches them to speak about something that's extracurricular and they don't have a clue. So make sure that anything you do extra, you always just keep them informed, just an email, hey, just letting you know I'm having after school practice for Christmas, just so that if a parent speaks to them, they're not in the dark, and we want to make them look better. Then we want to make them look good, and keeping them informed will make them look good. So communicate about yourself, what you have going on, if you have any needs or something that's not working for you. The second thing you need to communicate with or about is parents. Now, parents will probably come to you first if you have an open communication. Now, In a few episodes, we'll talk about communicating with parents, and it's important to have open communication. So that's not what this is about. But if a parent communicates something with you, such as, I'm really concerned that next year my kid will be in high school. I want to make sure they get all the credits that they need to go to secular university. You need to make sure that you're communicating that with the administrator to say, hey, in a few months, parents are expecting me to be able to teach X, Y, and Z because they want their kid on this track to this college or whatever. So if a parent communicates with you about an academic standard, maybe there's a school rule or something, hey, a parent comes to you and says, you know, this tardy thing, I'm just having a really hard time with getting my student to school on time. Can we have some leniency or something? Just make sure that anytime a parent communicates with you that you pass that on. Again, always keep the administrator in the loop. Even if it's something simple that you can handle, such as, I'm just trying to make this up at the top of my head, make sure it makes sense. If a parent comes to you and says, hey, I know that you can have indoor or outside lunchtime. I'd really appreciate if you let the kids go outside during lunch. And that's something that you, as the teacher who monitors lunch, can make that decision, but you should always just keep the administrator in the loop. Again, you can never over communicate. So we want to communicate about ourselves. We want to communicate about parents. We also need to communicate about student issues. Now, as I said, some administrators don't know what it's like to be in a classroom full time, but you should always communicate with them because they are in a place of leadership. They probably have a lot of wisdom and they can help you. Maybe it's something where you say, hey, I have this student and they are failing because they don't do their tests. They've been doing poorly on tests. They've been doing poorly on not turning in their homework, etc., etc. And they would give you some insight as to what to do. Another thing, if you have behavioral issues in your classroom, you should always keep the administrator in the loop right away, as opposed to letting it go on for weeks and weeks and then say, hey, I have this problem and I have this student who does XYZ and they've repeatedly done it. You never want to put the administrator in that position to have to come and be the disciplinarian in an exaggerated way when it could have been simply taken care of in the beginning, as soon as that student had that issue. So you always want to be in the communication with your administrator, and really the more communication you have with them, the more confidence and trust that they're going to have in you and your ability and your decision making, and it just really makes the team gel together and helps everything to go well. So when you really do have a big situation that you have to not confront them, but bring up to them, it's so much easier because they already know all of the backstory and they know all of the details. You don't have to spend all this time of playing catch up. You can just say, you know that this has been going on and it finally got to this point and now we have to make this decision. So just make sure that you have good communication with the administrator, and sometimes it feels like they may not be on the same page as you, but they are on the same team and they are there to help you. And just open and honest communication about yourself, your own needs, your classroom needs. Maybe it's a calendar or a scheduling issue, also about parents. So even if it's a small thing, bring that to the administrator's attention, because they might know, especially if they're a pastor and administrator, they might know some other thing that's going on that it would be important to have that little piece of information as well. So anything parents bring to you, even if you can handle them on your own, make sure that you take that to the administrator. And then thirdly, any student issues, behavior, academics, positive and negative. So you can say, hey, I saw this student and they went above and beyond at lunchtime. They took their time and they picked up all the trash in the playground, or whatever it may be. Just keep them in the loop. So that's going to conclude the episode today. Please remember that we need to always communicate with our authority, whomever it may be in that position. Have a great week, and I'll see you next week for the second episode. If you want to make sure that you don't miss any, go ahead and subscribe to our channel and you'll get a fresh episode every week.